I love the old adage that a smart person learns from their mistakes and a wise person learns from the mistakes of others. And today I'm going to share a mistake that could have cost one of our clients his business, and it did cost his partner's family almost $2 million in unnecessary taxes. I haven't met you yet. I'm Chris Wilbratte, and I'm a partner at Echelon Financial and Osborne Morano Getson CPAs. And our team can only work with a select number of business owners and entrepreneurs. So we created this channel to help a lot more people. See, when someone starts a business, they're managing so many competing priorities that some important priorities can slip through the cracks. Mike and Jack were clients who'd grown their business into a serious enterprise over 15 years. Jack called us one day and we could tell immediately that something was wrong. He was in shock because Mike, his business partner, had suddenly passed away and it was completely unexpected. Mike was only 50 years old. Just a few weeks ago, they'd been celebrating a series of new deals that were going to grow their business by over 20%. Now, he couldn't think past the next minute. As the shock wore off, he was experiencing a lot of emotions, from being worried about Mike's wife, Debbie, and their children, to worrying about how this was going to impact the business. He was overwhelmed. The reason Jack called us is because we're a CPA firm, and we had a very close relationship with he and Mike. He didn't know what to do next and was looking for direction. We had another client who lost a business partner, so we knew what to ask to help him think through the situation. What we learned is that Mike and Jack had a basic business operating agreement, but they had not set up a buy-sell agreement, and they didn't have a funding mechanism in place so he would have the capital to buy out Debbie. She was now his business partner, and she didn't have to sell. And if she wanted to, she could have a significant say over the business. We helped him think through an action plan that included calling his banker and his attorney to get their input and recommendations. Jack reported that Debbie had to be a signer on the debt for the new deals because she was now a 50% owner of the firm. Debbie had never been involved in the business. Jack said she let Mike handle everything related to business and money. Jack started thinking out loud. What if she wanted to take over Mike's role with no experience or knowledge of the market? The gravity of the situation started to sink in. What if, what if, what if? So many questions with no easy answers. It was a lot to process and he was feeling overwhelmed. Jack knew he had to talk to Debbie about the business, but she was grieving, in shock, and caring for her children. He wanted to be respectful of her situation, but there were a lot of deadlines coming up in the business. They had an important credit renewal coming up, as well as some mezzanine debt that had to be signed off in order to take on the new deals they had signed. He reached out to her and scheduled a call after the funeral, and that week felt like a year. See, when you have a buy-sell agreement in place, you have a clearly defined process that everyone has agreed to in advance. This eliminates a lot of stress and the fear of the unknown that you may experience in a crisis. After all, there's a lot of money at stake, and people can behave irrationally in situations like this. The process for buying out a partner, whether you have a buy-sell agreement or not, generally looks like this. You need an agreement for a purchase price for their ownership in the business. Most of the time, that involves having 3 appraisals done on the value of the business and using an average of these 3 appraisals as the purchase price. Jack wanted to buy Debbie out, but didn't know if she would take a note and let him pay her off over time, or would she want a lump sum? Life insurance is the most common funding mechanism for a buyout because it gives you all the purchase money at once. And there's another benefit to using life insurance, is that the proceeds are tax-free to the recipient. So if there's $1 million buyout from life insurance, the beneficiary receives 100% of it without any tax consequences. But now their expansion plans were in limbo because there wasn't a predetermined process for the buyout, and Jack needed to come up with the money on his own to pay off Debbie. He had 60 days to figure all this out, or they would lose those big deals. A few days after the funeral, Jack and Debbie met to discuss the business and get her thoughts on what was next. He gave her a high-level walkthrough of the business and the good news about the growth and the debt they'd be taking on for the expansion. Debbie shut down. She said she didn't feel comfortable because she didn't understand the business, and the thought of taking on millions of dollars of debt scared her. She decided to move back to her hometown to be close to her family and just wanted to be bought out. She wasn't comfortable with the payment plan. She wanted a lump sum. Now, Jack was relieved that she wanted to be bought out, and he had spoken to his bankers in advance about buying Debbie's shares and was told that he wouldn't be able to borrow enough because of their current debt and what he needed to fund the growth of the business. He had never had to raise money from investors because he and Mike had bootstrapped their growth with their own money and some bank debt. He had a new set of problems that he had to navigate. It's one thing for Jack and Mike to invest in their business as owners, and a completely different thing to raise money from investors because this is governed by federal and state securities laws. This can have serious consequences if it isn't done correctly. Papering the deal involves working with specialized attorneys, and the cost of these documents is in excess of $50,000. If they had the buy-sell agreement with life insurance, Jack wouldn't have to take on any additional legal risk nor have to pay all the extra associated legal costs. So let's look at the documents that are required. He has to have a business plan, a pitch deck, a private placement memorandum, a subscription agreement, a shareholder agreement, a term sheet, financial statements, a cap rate table, articles of incorporations and bylaws, legal and regulatory compliance documents, and due diligence documents. And as you look at this list of documents, Jack will spend a lot of time and focus to work on these in addition to running the business and speaking with potential investors. See, we had a list of local appraisers who agreed to have the appraisals done in 30 days, and he gave the attorney the go-ahead to start putting together the documents. Jack had made smart choices with his money, but after buying his lake house last year, he had access to about $2.5 million in cash and securities. He knew he would need a lot more money than that to buy Debbie's shares, and it was stressing him out. And now Jack had to start the process of raising capital. He needed to think about the type of people he wanted as investors. See, you don't want a lot of small investors who may not understand your business and who may have unrealistic expectations. So we set up a list of criteria for investors. We wanted investors with a history of business success, that they had a strong professional network so they could help him grow his business. We wanted them to be experienced investors and preferably be high net worth individuals or a family office. So here's how the situation played out. The average appraisal was a little over $15 million. He and Debbie set a closing date in time to get the business expansion loan signed off. Because of the strength of the business and the new contracts they had won, he raised money from 4 investors who had significant business networks and who would serve on his board of directors. Jack said he knew he had threaded the needle, getting everything done in such a short time. And all's well that ends well, but this situation was so much more difficult than it had to be. In fact, it could have gone sideways on him in several ways. Debbie could have refused to sell and wanted to influence business decisions. He might not have been able to find investors, or he could have lost control of the business. And the process cost him so much in time and energy that could have been spent on business growth and spending time with his family. Here's where you get to learn from the mistakes of others. By now, you can see the value of having a buy-sell agreement in place with life insurance as the funding vehicle. If they had set one up, a documented transition process would have been in place, the valuation method would have been set, and a funding mechanism in the form of life insurance would have been in place. It would have eliminated a lot of stress for both Debbie and Jack. Debbie would have known what to expect and when, and Jack would not have had to go through the process to raise capital through investors. Oh, and it would have saved Debbie $1.78 million in capital gains taxes because of the sale of her stock was subject to capital gains and the net investment income tax. And while selling your interest for cash is taxable, life insurance proceeds are tax-free. For many business owners, their business is their biggest asset. We view this as part of the estate planning process for business owners because their business is central to their wealth creation and their estate planning. Other important documents you should have as a business owner include an operating agreement, bylaws, employment agreements, non-disclosure agreements, and many more depending on your industry. It's important to consult with a knowledgeable attorney to make sure you have all of your bases covered. So if you're a business owner and need help with tax strategy, tax preparation, bookkeeping, or wealth management, give us a call. I hope this was informative and useful for you.